All right, Sherwood, thanks for joining us. Why don't you introduce yourself, your organization?
Sure. Thanks. Braedon, appreciate the opportunity here today. So Sherwood Robbins, I'm the managing director at a company called Seedcopa PA and Seedco DE. So we're what they call a certified development company, and we basically represent the SBA, Small Business Administration, in a program called the 504. And yes, we're going to do letters and numbers all day long, aren't we? But with the SBA, it's a program that we are able to actually represent locally and work with borrowers like we have over time. Mm-hmm. And basically, it's a program that allows small businesses to purchase owner-occupied property. Yep. And equipment, longer-term equipment. So it's a program that we've been involved. Seedco celebrates their 40th anniversary this year.
Wow.
So we're proud of that, being able to work with so many local borrowers over the years and really get benefits to the businesses.
That's awesome. 40 years. That's a
long time.
So over the last, really we can just look back at 10 years, but I'm curious all the way back, what are some of the changes that you've been seeing, with the property now over the last couple of years, especially since the pandemic and all? What are some of the changes we've been seeing over that time? Because I know, you guys have great expertise with all those years of experience.
Thank you. So I've been here about 16 years, coming up on 16. So I think the one thing, speaking of going back to letters and numbers, let's go right to the numbers, is obviously the price of the properties has really significantly changed over those years. Yeah. So what we're seeing is just those small businesses that if revenues have increased, they probably have not increased in line with the property costs. So what we do a lot of analysis on is what are your rental costs today? Do you have the opportunity to buy a property? And we kind of do that analysis with the borrowers and the business owners. I think the other thing that we've changed is I think you see a lot more oversight, compliance, and some discussions with the federal agencies or state agencies that we work with.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing, so that I can remember going back to when I first started here and coming out of banking, the amount of input that we needed to put in, credit memorandum, when we tell the story of the borrower's project, they were limited. There wasn't a whole lot of pages. And now if it's a complex project, that might be a 70-page document.
Wow.
So really to tell that story, to document, to memorialize that story, and look back on that. So a lot of the memorandums that we have from 10 and 12 and 40 years ago were a lot thinner than what we're seeing today.
Right. Yeah, and to that point, you're talking 10, 20 years ago. So we haven't mentioned yet, but the big surprise is that, about 10 years ago? So we actually worked with Seedcopa, the SBA, to acquire the loan for this building.
We did.
Is that correct?
We did.
So that was really exciting, and that was a little bit before my time of joining the team, but in a bit here we'll get Walt, the owner of IT Edge, in, and you guys can chat about that loan process. But we have a lot of small business owners, local businesses, especially in Chester County, that could potentially benefit from the services that you offer. So I'm curious if you could just kind of remark on small business owners. Maybe it's someone that started a couple years ago and is looking to scale. Where does Seedcopa come into play in their growth?
Right. That's a great question. So I would say a lot of the programs that we use, and I think the Seedco, if you will, like elevator pitch that we talk about if we're out in the market, Seedco is an economic development lender. We specialize in federal, state, and local programs that help small businesses get the money they need to either purchase their building, grow, expand. I'd say we complement bank financing, so I think we're able to be looked at as a complement to that rather than competitor.
Right.
And we're looking at the programs to say, do they make sense? So again, going back, and we'll save some for Walt to come in here, but going back as we first talked about, Walt, the CPA, introduced us and said, hey, I think you should look into this. Is an opportunity, a complement to what the banks are doing. One of the program benefits from, and so not only is Seedco 40 years old, but the SBA 504 program, the program that we talked about and utilized here with IT Edge, that is about 40 years old as well. So we were some of the first to implement that back into the 80s. And when that was coming online, it really still is the advertisement, if you will, today to the small business, the potential for less money out of pocket. So the borrower bringing in less money, as little as 10%, which is really one of the benefits to a growing business, expanding business. And then the other nice benefit, and still in this day and age, and we might get into interest rates in a little bit here, but as interest rates have gone back up to maybe what is a little bit more normal historically, but But as interest rates, they're set in fixed interest rates. So, these could be a 20 or a 25-year fixed interest rate for the life of the loan. So that, again, to the small business owner, they're not looking at that and saying, wait a second, the interest rate's going to change, and then what will my payments be? These programs allow that to go in, get fixed, and set for the life of the loan.
Yeah, I mean, the benefits are pretty obvious
Right,
with
right.
some of those pieces. What are some of the roadblocks that people can encounter, a small business owner can encounter going through that process?
So thanks for asking that, Braedon. That wasn't a good setup. No. We don't mince words. So the nice part about this is we get to be really transparent, economic development lender. Some deals work out, some deals don't.
Yeah.
But the discussion that we have is that. Let's be really transparent. So we don't mince words about that. It's a federal agency or it's a state agency program. There might be a smaller package, not that we're complex, but we're going to ask for a little bit more than a bank financing. Yeah. Federal agency guidelines, that's our job to really navigate to, the Seedco PA expertise that we try to be expert in is how do we navigate working with the SBA in Washington or California, the processing center? Right. How do we work with Harrisburg in Pennsylvania as the state loan programs? And really kind of share that so that the borrower, Walt and IT Edge, doesn't have to go through that or the business themselves. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really it. It is a little bit more complex, but it's seeking out that hopefully what Seedco PA is, and I think people find this in the market, right, that we try to be that expert, share that knowledge, so that it's not the borrower's job to go and read this 300-page manual about this program. Right. And then costs. That's something that we show up front right away. It is a little bit more expensive than traditional financing. But again, for the benefit, and this is the cost versus, so you're looking at it and saying, okay, is the less money out of pocket and the long-term fixed interest rate for a higher fee? Let me do that analysis. And I think it allows the business owner to really look at apples to apples. So if I have a financing option, this lets them look at another one and say, which one is really beneficial to me and my organization?
Yeah, just to at least give the business owner the option and to give them more options to weigh.
Correct.
I would imagine in every scenario it might not be the right move, but you would figure that out with a conversation with you and your team first. Right. So opening the door to that conversation, I'm sure that's a free call,
it is,
a quick consultation.
Absolutely.
Pick up the phone and dial the number and learn if it's right. But without people knowing that the option is out there, then you could be limiting your choices.
Correct.
So just opening the door to the agency of the business owner, I think, is a huge benefit of the services that you guys provide.
And I think, Braedon, the other idea is that the business owner, the individual that owns the business, let alone the business itself, but oftentimes that business in its life cycle may only buy one commercial property. Right. So I think the other part of it is in this day and age, we're now talking, it's not tens of thousands of dollars to purchase property. So with it being a number of $100,000, let alone number of $1 million acquisition price tags, isn't it good to just kind of look at those opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point. Whenever you're dealing with these huge numbers, yes, it's worth taking every precaution to make sure you're making the right choice.
Right, and learn those options. You said it.
Yeah, I know, with IT Edge, the growth that we've experienced, I'm sure we'll talk on this point, but with the growth that we've experienced with starting with IT and then moving and expanding into software and digital marketing services, the ability to grow into the space has been great. So, thank you to you guys for the services that you provided to us, because as we've been able to grow and add on these new services and divisions, having the space to do so is invaluable. And I know that you mentioned a relationship with the Chester County Economic Development Council.
Yes.
We actually spoke with Patrick, who works with their team in the I2N initiative. So I'm curious if you could kind of explore and flesh out that relationship with the CCDC.
Sure, absolutely. And with the Patrick relationship, it's one where we talk often. It's really that suite of services. So while we're the finance or the lending arm, it really is those opportunities where, like you said, is now let's focus into some of the specific workforce issues or some of that growth. So, it might sound a little bit of cliche, but thank you for the compliment, by the way, with IT Edge partnership. But it really is that situation where your success is our success. And I think on the SBA 504 side, it is an economic development program. So it's that concept where when you were first leasing this very space, actually that we're sitting in, and then expanded into the suite next door, it was really about that growth. So with this being economic development, jobs based, and changing the marketplaces, that is the success story here. So I mean, for us to be part of that, it's great. So I'll actually turn that tide of thank you for letting us be part of that. But that's the economic development side. And then what we see with the Chester County economic development relationships as well is how do we further that? How do we, in Chester County and beyond, with Seedcopa PA is all of Pennsylvania, but in Chester County and beyond, how do we take concepts of information technology or technology in general, other industry partnerships that CCEDC, the acronym there, that CCEDC has for youth, for manufacturing, for energy initiatives, things like that. And how do we take and make really Chester County and beyond, how do we make that really grow and continue to grow? So I think it's great to see is that, what started as, you start now just expanding these relationships is that we now have, what started as a lending relationship is now that you're part of that voice that could be reaching out to those smaller businesses just starting, growing, or moving into Chester County today. Right. IT Edge is now part of that voice.
Yeah, absolutely. So not only opting into, potentially better financing solutions, but opting into a whole network of support, I think is a huge benefit of what you're offering as well.
And Braedon, to say kind of the compliment as well is, and then IT Edge being part of that support. So again, it's just that networking and camaraderie, is that you become a member of that group and you become, that meeting and you walk in there and you're meeting somebody, and let alone in your industry, it might find out that you end up finding someone to collaborate with, or you find a new partner, you find a new client.
Right.
So I think it's just those opportunities. I'm with you is what starts as lending and it just grows from relationships. It really is the right word.
Yeah, and final piece from me before we can pull Walt in and you guys can talk about this specific space and how you collaborated there. Just on that technology side. So is there any benefit for a small business owner, a growing organization in the area to benefit from your type of financing in the technology space? Is it exclusively towards that estate and property acquisition, or does it lean into if you're growing technically, digitally, in a technology way that they could benefit from those programs?
Sure. So there's actually, and that's kind of the nice part, is we, as we've grown over the years, Seedcopa PA has grown over the years, what we've looked at is multifaceted as well. So again, with the federal, state, and local programs, there's use of funds, how the money's going to get spent for the loan request. While that can buy something tangible, building that we can touch or equipment that we can touch, it can also finance working capital. If there's a growth, if there's a new, again, consulting with IT Edge and bringing on a new IT firm and kind of upgrading hardware in that small business or software, that is one where there's other opportunities. So it's not just the building, but we can finance more than that. So again, it's really that conversation. It's you want to find somebody that you can communicate with, share. You said it earlier, we like to do what's called a preliminary assessment. So, once we have a comfort level, the initial phone call, we'll actually look at financials and we'll actually start talking about what does it look like and is there growth or, should you be buying this size building or really this size building? So, being able to understand even the finance side of the business, and that becomes the borrower's team, if you will, or the business owner's team as they're looking at financing and lending and borrowing is, do you have that relationship with perhaps your attorney, your tech firm, your CPA, things like that, and who are you bringing in for specific pieces of knowledge?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's a great place for us in our conversation before we bring Walt in to close there. But thank you again for your partnership. Thanks for coming in and chatting. Now I'm excited to pull Walt in, and you guys can talk a little bit about the loan for this building and that process and how it helped us.
Well, thank you so much as well.